Ashes and dust. When my father died, one of the tasks that my husband and I took upon ourselves was to go up to his cabin and clean the place out. Growing up as a family, we'd spent many summers there. I personally hadn't been in a really long time at this point. But Mom and Dad had spent a good probably 10 years of their retirement up there during the summers until Mom passed a few years ago. Dad really hadn't had the heart to go back to even check on the place during the summers after she was gone, because he said it brought back too many memories. But he did allow my cousins to stay there a few years in a row. And honestly, considering how unreliable my cousins normally are, I was really surprised when we opened the door to the cabin, and it was in pretty decent shape. There wasn't any clutter that they'd left behind, and when I rummaged through the cupboards, there wasn't even a crumb of food either. So that was good, because that meant the odds of finding bugs or mice decreased by a lot. One thing that did need quite a bit of work, though, was the fireplace. It was full of ash and dust and soot. So they had left us a bit of a mess, but you know what? At that point, I was just grateful that there was very little work we had to do to get the place in good shape. In his will, my father had said it was up to my husband and I what we wanted to do with the place. We could either keep it or we could sell it. Now, my husband and I weren't campers. Our children were all grown up and away at college. Soon they'd be getting their own apartments, and children we had hoped wouldn't be in the future for quite a few years yet. So we didn't really have any reason to keep it in the family. I guess we could have kept it and allowed my cousins to use it, I suppose. But honestly, I don't think my father would have trusted them to take good enough care of it, so we just decided to sell it. As my husband swept the fireplace, I opened the front door and the windows to let in some fresh air and kind of air out the place. Then I dusted off some of the pictures that sat on the mantel. There was a photo of my brother Sandy and I as little kids. He was 6 and I was 4. Sitting down on the dock by the lake, our little feet dangling in the water. My brother's 2 front teeth were missing in the picture. Perfectly visible with that big goofy grin he had on his face. He died 12 years later in a car accident. I felt the pain come rushing back to my heart for a brief few minutes as I traced my fingers along the glass that covered the photograph. I sucked in this big, huge breath of air. "Are you all right?" my husband asked, dumping a dustpan filled with ash into the trash can. "Yeah, I'm okay, I'm good," I said. "This place is just full of old ghosts for me, I guess." My husband nodded. He looked at me thoughtfully for a minute. I gave him a look that said, "No, really, I'm fine." And he got back to sweeping. If I'm honest, I guess deep down, I didn't want to hold on to the cabin anymore for the same reason my dad hadn't visited it before he passed. Too many memories. Photographs, gathering dust. Memories floating around like orbs. Some of them really good, like Dad burning all the hot dogs and having to drive a few miles into town to get a pizza and letting us get ice cream on the way home. Some harder to process, like the first summer we spent there without Sandy. He was only 18. He just started his freshman year in college, and in a matter of seconds, an error from another driver ended his life, his future. Then there was all the fun times that we had, sitting around the campfire, Dad telling stupid jokes, Sandy trying to stuff as many marshmallows into his mouth as he could. The summer that Dad and I walked into the cabin alone, just the two of us left, that was really hard. I started to feel chilly, so I closed the windows. It's a bit chilly out, isn't it? My husband nodded. Suddenly the door slammed shut. We both jumped near out of our skins. I guess it's windy too, my husband laughed. I nodded and arranged the pictures. Yeah, I guess that's one way to keep the cold out. Sheesh. Once we'd gotten the fireplace swept, the floor swept, the windows washed, and everything was in its place, I suddenly found myself staring at all the photographs. I knew I needed to take them with me. Sitting here, they'd only collect more dust. And whoever bought the place would have no use for them. Pictures of Sandy and me by the lake. Pictures of Dad holding a tiny fish. Mom pretending to clean the tiny fish. What would they do with all these memories? I found myself feeling really anxious about having the pictures in my possession, though. I felt like it might be too painful. My husband suggested before we leave that he take a picture of me in front of the fireplace. Kind of a final memory in this place, I guess. I stood in between all the pictures. I thought how strange it was, and then how painful it was, that I was the only one left. A tear slid down my cheek as my husband took the picture. I wiped it quickly away and hoped that he didn't notice. Afterwards, we gathered all the pictures up and put them in a box. I kind of positioned my jacket over the top of them so that on the ride home in the car, I wouldn't see them and feel a panic attack coming on. Hours later, at home, I was fixing dinner. My husband was uploading the pictures that he'd taken of the cabin so that our realtor could list it. He called me into the living room. "What is it?" I asked, wiping my hands with a dish rag. He pointed to the picture on the screen. There I was, standing in front of the fireplace, in between all the photographs, looking really sad. There, surrounding me, were 3 huge blobs of light airy and misty white. My husband blew the picture up a little bit, and while it was still mostly just mist and light, we saw what appeared to be a hand resting on my right shoulder, and another hand resting on my left hand. Maybe, I thought, someone or someones were trying to tell me that you're never really alone.